Let's talk about rural America. Let's talk about it. 97% of America is rural and frontier areas, not the city. Most people live in cities, but the most of America is rural, frontier locations. 60 million people, so almost 1 in 5, live in geographic locales that we would categorize as rural or frontier or Appalachian areas. There are a lot of challenges facing these populations, particularly in regard to behavioral health care. These challenges include a lack of service providers, a lack of infrastructure, a lack of experts that specialize in certain aspects of behavioral health care. There's a lack of communication. There's a lack of resources. There's a ton of other different issues that are associated with these areas that cause problems in regard to behavioral health care. A lack of water, a lack of roads, a lack of, in many parts of it, adequate electricity, adequate basic resources. All of these things coupled together present a situation where folks that live in rural areas are significantly more at risk in general health, but disparities are pronounced in regard to behavioral health. We see the way the opioid crisis is devastating rural communities, particularly those that don't have access to adequate treatment services. During my postdoc, I moved out into rural Gainesville. And in rural Gainesville, I moved into a modular home, also known as a mobile home, on 10 acres of land. I'm a city boy, born and raised in the city. I was born in Orlando, I was raised in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. I've always been in the city. I knew nothing about rural areas. When I moved out here, the first thing I noticed was the dirt road. It was a lime rock road, bumpy road, about half a mile to even get to my house. You had to ride half a mile on what we call the dirt road. It was a lime rock road, but you had to ride a mile on this road to even get to my house. Another thing I noticed was the blackness. I mean, there's no street lights, so I took for granted how lit the city is. Well, that's actually a pun, but the city is lit. But how lit the city is. At night, it would get dark, the darkest dark you've ever seen. So there I was, for the first time in my life, on 10 acres by myself, in the darkest night you've ever seen in your life. And I'm a black guy, the only black guy in a 10-mile radius. So inevitably, my opinions and perspectives on the Second Amendment became a lot more nuanced. So I became the proud owner of a 25 gauge shotgun. I mean, it really was home protection. Out there in the wilderness by yourself on 10 acres, surrounded by your closest neighbor was a mile away or acre away or so. I quickly understood the struggle was real. And not just that, the culture of guns, my knowledge of the culture of guns improved significantly. Every Sunday, it seems, sometimes Saturday and Sunday, almost every, I mean, at least 3 times a month or twice a month, folks would shoot their guns. Coming from the inner city, hearing gunfire for me brought up traumas. It brought up negative thoughts and feelings for myself. I was scared that they would scare the animals that were on my property away. But I came to realize that for them, shooting a weapon was a therapy. It was a release. It was something fun. They did it for fun. They shot weapons for, first of all, let me tell you, everybody's strapped out there. I mean, everybody, from the cute grandma on her way to church. Yes, she has her Bible. She has a 38 special in her Bible. The older gentleman who could barely mow the lawn, he's strapped and he shoots often. So everybody's packing. So shooting becomes something that's of relief. It becomes something that a way of entertaining your guests that come from the city. It's not the same implications, not the same connotations that it was for me in the city. full disclosure, I'm still, pretty liberal when it comes to gun availability, particularly in this, in the inner cities. But in hunting, I'm pretty liberal when it comes to that. But I do want to say that I understood. I had to be in that environment, in the context, to fully understand how important it was and how, in a way, harmless it was in those cultures. So I think I'm very grateful for that lesson. Another one of the key things that I quickly learned was that the water that I had access to on my 10-acre mobile home came from a well. And this is basically water flowing 180 feet below my 10 acres. It had to be tested. I had to pay $50 to have my water tested at the Department of Health. It came back positive for E. coli and other bacteria. So then I bought almost a $2,000 whole home water filtration system. And then had the water tested again, and the E. coli was gone, but the bacteria was there. So we had to buy bottled water anyway. But the water, the quality of water, I started thinking about that. The quality of water. What if my neighbors didn't have the means to buy a $2,000? I didn't have the means, but I was terrified, so I bought it. But what if they didn't have the means to buy this whole home water filter system? Premium water system, the most expensive one on the market I could find, and it still didn't kill the bacteria, so I had to buy bottled water anyway. One of the greatest things that happened to me, being out there on my 9 acres, out there among my rural people, right? The only black guy within 20 miles, man. My appreciation for animals. I became deeply connected to nature. Animals and crops that we have to grow. A lot of love and a lot of sweat and sometimes blood goes into the produce and the foods we eat every day. And I had a great appreciation for it. There were beautiful animals on my property. White-tailed deer, families of white-tailed deer that would jump and hop along the 10 acres. And we had this parade of turkeys that would come. Wild turkeys. Just beautiful animals and they can fly, fluffy, plumpy, beautiful, but they will take off on you in a minute and fly high in the sky. It was remarkable. We had my favorite animal became a gopher turtle named Turley. Now Turley was a bit of a superstar, and I began to learn more about little Turley Turtle. Turley Turtle dug burrows, right? And these burrows, 350 different species had a home and survived because of these burrows that Turley dug all the time. And by the way, burrows are protected in Florida, so you can't disrupt those burrows, but they dig them all the time. But I thought about that, What would it be like if my work was as important as Turley's? Turley dug all day. Me, I dig through resources trying to find ways to get you to engage with this course. What if my work was as important as Turley's, where 350 people's lives was improved because of what I was doing? You dig? Anyway, but that appreciation for nature. I tried to become a farmer, but I'm god awful at it, and everything died. But I had a great appreciation for it. I mean, there's a lot of years, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of skill. Sometimes generations and generations of seed planting and farming techniques goes into a simple salad, a house salad that we'll order. We would order if we weren't in a social distancing COVID outbreak. But you get the point that, do you ever think about that? The fruit, the vegetables, there's a lot that goes into that, a lot of science goes into it. So I really appreciated that. And so essentially I started to say this was a different culture, a culture that would have never understood if I didn't take the time to understand it. And the only reason I had the luxury and to fully understand this culture was because I was in it myself. I was there. I decided to go out there, leave the city, and it was amazing. It was peaceful. The quiet was therapy. The nature was therapy. The space was therapeutic. The lack of traffic, the lack of noise was very helpful for me to recenter after a very arduous and stressful graduate school process. But it wasn't all positive in a way, there were some pieces of it that alarmed me as someone who was studying epidemiology at the time. What alarmed me was, number one, the quality of the water. I worried about my neighbors. I worried about the quality of the water that all of us had access to. I worried about the fact that we all were responsible for getting our water tested and maintaining the testing of water to make sure it wasn't harmful to drink. I worried about the lime rock that was prone to flood. The lime rock was prone to flood with a heavy rain, which was very frequent in Gainesville. So what then does behavioral health become? How do we get to our sessions for substance abuse or obesity or whatever the behavioral health issue is when the roads are flooded? It was not uncommon for us to lose electricity. So then I thought about my neighbors who relied on devices that were powered by electricity to maintain their health. So what were they to do during a prolonged power outage? I thought about the distance, being distant away from a fire department. So when the power's out, the first thing we think about is build a fire and grill. Well, that becomes a very interesting predicament if the power is out. So you don't really have cell phone service out there. Your landline is probably disconnected at this point. 100% is disconnected at this point. And you have to cook by making the fire. Fun, yes, but dangerous. And you don't have water because your well is powered by electricity. Most people who, like myself, born and raised in St. don't even consider these things. And similarly, we don't even consider the lived experiences of folks in these areas. And we turn a blind eye to some of these disparities. There's a ton of other issues I can address, but I think you get the point that there is, just like every other culture, if you practice cultural relativism, you'll start to see the beauty in that culture. And if you approach it with a public health perspective, with a keen understanding for social issues, what I call social justice approach, then you'll start to see their vulnerability. And then you'll start to be able to help because now you can notice it and you can see how important it is. So yes, infrastructure is extremely important. We have the resources. We have to keep these populations in mind. So I charge you and I challenge you as you go forth and as we get through these tough times, think about the impact that not only the issues we discuss in this class related directly to behavioral health, but some of the things that are indirectly implicated in behavioral health, such as COVID-19. How is COVID-19 impacting people in rural and frontier areas, but also how does this outbreak disrupt their ability to access behavioral health services? I'm Dr. Johnson, and that's my talk on rural and frontier areas. Peace to my farmer homies, old Jebby Jeb and Tippy Tippy Tucky with the broke down tractor. Shout out to Tip and Tuck and Shiggy Shab and Jiggy with the crazy knee and Bobby, Bishop Bobby, he was the man. And Drunk Tony. Drunk Tony still owes me $5, Drunk Tony. But I miss you very much. And I'll see you on the dirt road as soon as I get the time. Peace.